Welcome back, first grade Huskies. It's Mrs. Middleton again, and I'm here and excited to teach more Writers Workshop. Today, we're moving into the revision part of writing. Revision means that we are going to add things in that will make our writing even better. But before we do that, I need to tell you, I have seen such great detail and great writing coming from you over the past week. I have been so impressed, and what I'm going to teach you today will help you become an even better writer and make your writing even better. But first, I need to tell you, we need 3 things for writing today: a big smile, great attitude, and wonderful attention. And if you have those 3 things, we're going to have a great lesson. Okay, first off, I want to share with you a slide presentation that I created for you to explain what we are doing today. And our whole lesson today, and the purpose I'm teaching you, is to tell you about something called temporal words. And some people call them transition words. So it's the same thing: temporal words, transition words. We're going to learn what those are today and how to use them. We're going to learn how to identify and use temporal words, not just in writing, but also in reading. And to give you a little hint of what these temporal words are, you can see them in the colors around the page. Words like first, then, next, while, finally, today, tomorrow, yesterday, after. Those are just a few temporal words. There are so many words and phrases that I will teach you about today. And here we go. Okay, first, I have a question right here, and that question is, what are temporal words? Well, here they are. Temporal words, also known as transition words, as I said, are used to show sequence of events. Yes, that's order, the order of the events in a story, such as a personal narrative. Notice here I say at first, or first, then, finally. Those are words that we use to tell the order of a story. And since we are authors of personal narratives, we will use temporal words in our writing. Next. Oh, see, I just used a temporal word. Okay. And then next one. Why do we use temporal words? Why is that important to us? Well, using them allows us, or as writers, it helps us move the story along from time to time or place to place in our writing. Sometimes we switch settings and it helps us move from place to place. But our story is always starting in the beginning, going to the middle, and then to the end. And that, using these temporal words, helps us show the movement of time from the beginning to the middle to the end. And this is how it helps readers. It helps readers keep track of the sequence of events of the story. It helps the readers keep track because people are going to read your writing. And we want to make sure that we use temporal words so that they know what the beginning of your story is, what the middle is, and what the end is. All right, I've made a poster to give you some ideas on what some temporal words and phrases are that we can use. Now, let me say that there are a lot listed here. I do not expect you to use all of these. These are just suggestions and a lot of words that you could try in your writing. If you use all of these, that would not make a very good writing piece. But some words to signal the beginning of a story are first, once, one time, to start, one morning, it started when, one day. I know a lot of you start stories like that with me all the time. One day I went to Dairy Queen, that type of thing. Okay. And then some that signal the middle of the story. Then, next, later, after that. And I could go on, but I won't. And some that signal that the end of the story is coming are words like finally, last, at last, in the end, and there are more. Remember, temporal words help move a story forward, and they show sequence of events. Very important for a writer. Okay, right now I am going to share with you this book, The Relatives Came, or just parts of it, because this has good examples of using temporal words. So, all right, so I will switch to another screen. And here we go. All right. And let's spread out, let's stretch this out a little more so you can see the whole thing. Okay. Thank you for your patience while I adjust the screen. Okay, The Relatives Came by Cynthia Rylant. She is an excellent author. If you've ever read any of the Henry and Mudge books, those are hers as well, but this is a great one for showing temporal words. Let's begin. Thank you as I adjust. Thank you for being patient with me. Here we go. Oh, it's hard to see that. Let me adjust the lighting. There we go. Okay. It was in the summer of the year when the relatives came. They came up from Virginia. They left when their grapes were nearly purple enough to pick, but not quite. Oh, they used a temporal word here, when. That signals a time when something was happening. They had an old station wagon that smelled like a real car, and in it they put an ice chest full of soda pop. And up they came, and some boxes of crackers and some bologna sandwiches. And up they came from Virginia. Now, earlier I said that temporal words are good to help us transition from place to place. And so they're coming from Virginia, going to their relative's house. They left at 4 in the morning when it was still dark, before even the birds were awake. Oh, that's a temporal word that tells us they left early before birds were awake. Okay, and here they're traveling. They drove all day long and into the night. And when they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains, and they thought about their almost purple grapes back home. They thought about Virginia, but they thought about us too, waiting for them. So they drank up all their pop and ate up all their crackers and traveled up all those miles until finally they pulled into our yard. And look at that, finally. That lets us know that something has ended, and what's ended is their trip. So their trip is finally over. Now, I'm not going to read all this story. I will show you some other parts of it in the PowerPoint. But I just wanted you to see some temporal words. So let's go back to our PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So our next screen is a picture, or is a page that happens almost at the end of the story. So what has happened in the middle, the relatives came and they visited and they did all the things that they do when relatives visit. And this is towards the end of the story. So finally, after a long time, that's another temporal word. The relatives loaded up their ice chest and headed back to Virginia at 4 in the morning. We stood there in our pajamas and waved them off in the dark. We watched the relatives disappear down the road. Then we crawled back into our beds and felt too big and too quiet. We fell asleep. Look at that temporal word, then. it's telling us order. We watch the relatives disappear down the road. Then, after they watched the relatives disappear down the road, then they went back in and crawled into bed. And the relatives drove on all day long and into the night. And while they traveled along, they looked at the strange houses and different mountains. Whoops. And they thought about their dark purple grapes. Oh, and I can't see it out of there. Okay, that were in Virginia. And the last page here. And when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their silent, soft beds and dreamed about the next summer. And this tells us, and when they were finally home, finally, that means something has ended, their trip has ended, and when they were finally home in Virginia, they crawled into their beds. I do want to go back to the page that I kind of missed. And it says here, and the relatives drove on all day long and into the night, and while they traveled, so it's telling us that as they're traveling along, they were doing something else. And while they traveled, they looked at the strange houses. So those are some temporal words that were used in those stories. And I want to remind you, why do we use temporal words? We use temporal words because it helps our readers, people are reading our writing, and also us when we read, helps readers keep track of sequence and order, beginning of the story, middle of the story, end of the story. And it also, as writers, helps us move the story along from time to time or place to place so that readers, and it says, right, it did not finish that, sorry, so that readers can understand what's going on. Now, I do want to go back to one slide before I end. I want you to go back to this slide if you can. I'm going to go ahead and send this whole slideshow presentation to families so that you can use this chart. But when you do go to write your add and revise your writing and add temporal words in, this can be a helpful chart for you to pick words for the beginning, middle, and end. All right. I hope that you learned a lot from this presentation. Let me go to the end again. And I do want to tell you, you have one assignment. And there's just a tiny writing involved. All you have to do today is, when you're doing your self-selected reading, whatever book you're reading, and it's better to read a story than nonfiction for this particular assignment. But as you're reading, search for some temporal words, words that show order, words that show the sequence of events from beginning, middle to end. Thank you very much. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.